I would also caution that the board is now going to engage in a discussion about the issues you've heard tonight, ask questions, gather some more information, perhaps request more information in anticipation of having to make a vote on Tuesday. It's very important to realize that you can only vote if you show up. And I know that our board members that are here this evening, I believe are all committed to be there on next Tuesday. And I know that Mr. Pugh and Mrs. Zajac are both committed to be here next Tuesday. The same holds true for the vote on April 29th. You cannot vote by mail or email. You have to be here. So I'm hoping everyone is working hard to confirm that they will be available that evening and follow through with, I'm hoping, the same vote that we take on Tuesday. So at this point, I want to open the floor to the board members to ask questions of Mr. Rain and Ms. Sugars about what they've seen this evening.
I have two questions. All right, let's try this. How's that? Better. All right. So I have two questions. One has to do with the high school and the reductions of 5.5 FTEs in the class size. Have we calculated the end result of what the class sizes will be with these reductions and what classes are affected?
We have not calculated specifically where those cuts will be restored or what the class size effect will have on it. We actually, we just finalized the numbers and have just shared this with Mr. Seidel, so he hasn't had a chance to take a look at it yet. But by Tuesday, hopefully we can have an answer for you.
Okay. And the second question on you said there's $400,000 in tuition currently in the school district?
Yes.
Do you have a breakdown of what types of tuition students by any chance?
Predominantly, it is special education students that come from other districts. We do have a handful of parent-paid tuition students who come from other districts. Some of it is staff that brings their students here that pay tuition for that. And some of it is our extended day kindergarten program and our preschool program.
So just, some of that information would be useful for the committee that I'm chairing on revenue.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think we tend to forget about a lot of things that we do that are revenue related and tend to think of revenue generation as more of giving as opposed to using the assets that we have to generate funds. I know we share employees with other school districts, et cetera, so we ought to just spend some time thinking and accumulating all the various things that we do so that we have a good picture of going forward of what we've already accomplished and then can measure that against what we do accomplish. So, other questions?
I have a question, Mr. Mishler.
Yes.
So Lynn, if I we'll do it again. So Lynn, if I go back to the numbers and add up the total use of bank cap at just about 1.168 million, the total cuts of 1.21 million, and then last but not least, the second set of cuts at 1.43 million, that gets me to right about 3.8. And if I add in the 2% tax increase, that actually gets us to about 4.9 million in total. So if we went to a zero budget this year, we'd have a $4.9 million deficit in our original projection. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, we did. We were able to do some things on the revenue side to alleviate some of those. We we're able, like I said before, as I mentioned, the special ed and the regular ed tuition, we were able to increase those projections in the 14-15 budget versus what it was in the 13-14 budget.
Right.
We're also planning on budgeting some of our extraordinary aid, which we traditionally don't do because we budget so much fund balance, we don't do both. But we're going to budget some of our extraordinary aid as well as one of our state revenues, and we have some additional state aid. So we were able to counterbalance some of the issues by increasing some of our revenues.
Okay, and so the 2% budgeting the cap is obviously a sacrifice that the taxpayers will make to make this work. The additional $1.168 million of bank cap, that's another sacrifice that the taxpayers will make, or investment, depending on your perspective, to make this work. We look at the cuts, the $1.2 million is loss of staff because, of course, we don't have an option to restructure our commitments. So our choice is either to keep or to cut. Our choice is to cut in this case because we have no other choice. And last but not least, we've got $1.4 million in additional operational efficiencies that the district was able to find from our original budget. So that's let's call that the operating sacrifice or the operating investment that this proposal makes. Now, if we look at these, if we look at the restoration of the programs that you suggested, and we start at the elementary school, when we put the $184,000 back into the 3 elementaries, what percentage of the original proposed cuts does that restore?
At the elementary level?
At the elementary level to start.
That is about half.
About half. And what are we still cutting at the elementary level?
Most of the cuts at the elementary level are specifically tied to enrollment. So we're looking at, I think it was 2.7 FTEs due to enrollment.
So that's an individual we don't need for, or a position we don't need for the next year because of lowered enrollment at the elementary school.
Yeah, some of it's regular ed, some of it is special ed, some of it is a specials reduction, but yes, it's due to enrollment at the elementary level.
Okay. And then if we go to the UES and we restore $210,000 of positions at the UES, what percentage of the original cuts is that?
That is, I guess, we're restoring about 210, and we are still going to cut about 165.
And is that 165 enrollment based, or is that actual programs that we're losing?
Some of it is enrollment based. We will see some higher class sizes at 6th grade, 5th grade.
5th grade?
Yes, but that is it's kind of an anomaly. It's moving through those grade levels. It's not a sustained issue.
It's a bit of a bubble.
Yes, a bubble. Yep.
It's that one class. All right, so for the elementary level and the UES, this budget would essentially restore the program to 2013 levels.
Except for enrollment.
Enrollment, right,
Yep.
which is, those are kids that are not there, so we don't need to pay for them.
Correct.
And positions that we don't need the staff for because the kids don't, there's not that population in that school. All right, and then we go to WAMS with the $336,000 of restored programs or non-cut programs, depending on your perspective. What percentage of the original cuts does that restore there?
That is, well, we're restoring 336, and we're still cutting just over 200,000, but the 2 cuts are both retirements that won't be replaced.
So the conclusion that I should reach from this presentation is K through 8, we're making no changes to the school? In terms of programs?
In terms of programs, correct. Other than the family consumer science.
I'm asking questions, so we're just trying to understand the context.
Other than the family consumer science program, the middle school.
So the FCS program is the only strand or curricular thread that's being eliminated through the 8th grade?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm sure there'll be some discussion about this, but I'm trying to understand it as well. Now, if we go to the high school, there's clearly cuts.
Yes.
And those cuts are primarily through, to put a fine point on it, making the delivery more efficient by putting more kids in the room. I know.
Well, it will result in increased class sizes.
Okay. Well, and efficiency cuts both ways, because there's efficiency from a fiscal perspective, and there's efficiency from the, keep the district intact perspective. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that, Lee pointed that out as well. That's one of the sort of outstanding questions that we need to follow up on between now and next Tuesday is where are particular class sizes at the high school? Where do we think they're moving as a result of this?
Okay.
And you can judge, once you have the answer, you can judge the result. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Lynn. Sorry about that. Lynn, I'm concerned about, or a question about class sizes at the UES. Are they changing?
The fifth grade will have larger class sizes. We actually did a waiver for them this year. They're fourth graders this year. We did a waiver for them this year. We'll do a waiver for them as well next year. They will go to 26, maybe 27 in a class. But the fourth grade is seeing a decline. Fourth grade is seeing a decline. So those class sizes will be under the 25.
So,
Sorry. Are you saying, is there a bubble moving through the UES where eventually the class sizes will go down, or is this something that will be sustained at 26, 27 child level?
It's a bubble that's moving through. There'll be, a year after this, there'll be sixth graders. There'll be fifth graders going into 2014-15. Correct. So yeah, we'll have 2 years of it, but it is a bubble that's moving through the UES.
Right along is the issue that we have consistently had a class size waiver at some level for the last quite a few years. It's been one place or another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another question for you, Lynn.
Go ahead, Al.
On your forecast, basically what you're telling us is next year we start the budget process. You anticipate that we'll have a deficit of $3.2 million as the budget is currently constructed?
Yeah, as I said, that's some very quick back of the envelope calculations. If we project the increases we're seeing this year into the following budget year, we're looking at if we keep our staffing levels the same and anticipate the same investment in technology and all those things, we would be looking at approximately a $3.2 million increase in expenses.
Thank you.
And that's, is that before the 2% thing? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, again, another $1 million, and then we've got $1 million for bank cap left.
Right.
I said that the $3 million is before you apply the 2% cap, which is equal to about $1 million. And we would have at that point approximately $1 million for bank cap left to use.
Right.
And at that point, we will have used up all the bank cap that we have because
Correct.
we're now starting to budget at cap. So,
Yes.
Al, do you have
could I-
any?
No, I'm good.
Lynn, I have questions about the high school. So as far as what we're restoring, it's the guidance counselor situation. It's world language, alleviate the larger class sizes with the suggestion of the bank cap. And what we're cutting exactly at the high school would be what changes? Are we losing programs, and if so, which ones?
No, there wouldn't be, the only program that would be lost would be the Family Consumer Science program. The rest of the cuts would just be, would affect class size.
And the custodian person.
And the custodial person as well.
But the programming would be continuous except for family and consumer science.
Yes.
Yes, Cheryl.
So my question is just on the restoration of the 190,000 operational costs, the
Yes.
school schedule development. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Or?
Yeah, one of the things that we heard last week was about the need to look at our current schedules, look at our current curriculums, look at how we're delivering instruction, and to see if there are things that we could be doing differently. Is there, some type of expert, or is there some type of guidance that we can get from someone that can help us take a look at those items to see if we could be making changes so that for future efficiencies and savings.
Okay, and I think that we had, I wasn't at the last meeting, but the one prior, there were some individuals in the room from the community who also sort of serve as educational assessment individuals. Would we potentially be able to tap into community resources and
Absolutely.
then that number would go down?
Potentially, depending upon what our needs are and what's available.
Do you have any other questions, Ken? I just have, well, I'm just going to let Kathy finish if she was on the train. Good. Yeah.
I'm okay for the moment, thank you.
Okay, Dave, question?
Just a couple of questions. I just want to get a feel for historically where we've been, Mike, just so we can understand this year on the historic. So if we go back 3 years ago to when we had a failed budget, and that was when we still had voters who voted on the budget each year, made the failed budget. Do you know approximately what our salary and benefit numbers were at that point in time?
That was the 2009-2010 year.
I believe so.
That was previous to my time in the district, but I believe that our salary numbers were just over 40 million and our benefits were just under 10.
And take that forward to today. Where are we in the projected budget with our salary and benefit numbers?
We're just below 39 million in salaries and just over 10 million, or almost 11 million in benefits.
So the number between the two of them is approximately the same. The difference really is that the benefit number is going up.
Yes.
And that's just, and we have less staff members today than we did in 2009-10.
Yes.
And, I know that we have a committee, and hopefully we'll be able to get there with this over time. But, it's obvious that, our net number has been about the same. It's just that we have one number that continues to grow, one number that continues to shrink. We have a salary number that continues to shrink, a benefits number that continues to grow. But the overall education within the system, we're trying to maintain. We have all these people pushing us on revenue and everything else. We had a lot of people pushing us, rightly or wrongly, in trying to get benefits. And we all know that the governor helped us a couple of years ago with getting us, I'll call it a mandated concession for benefits. But I hope that there's a way that we can get there in the future. I know that we're working with the MEA now, talking to them about the future and ways that we could possibly make changes in these areas so that we can continue to provide the education we all believe is important across the board. And I hope, over time we're able to come up with some solution that fixes what is really becoming a long-term problem within our district, which is that, benefits are going up for everybody, and it's starting to impact in some ways how we're able to educate. And I hope that we're going to find other revenues to offset this over time as well. But I will say one other thing. The policy committee met in between these two meetings, and we reviewed our class size policy, and we're not making any recommendations to changes long-term to the class size policy. We don't think that that's wise. We obviously need to still continue done, in our opinion, the one-time waivers to the extent that we do this. We like the policy where it is right now. It's at 25, it's set for a reason. There's sound educational reason why we set it there, and the waiver process is probably a better way to go. That way we can continue these discussions going forward rather than move it up and then arbitrarily move it over and over again on a policy level. And my last question is on the high school. If I heard you correctly, because you had said that the high school cut number, or these numbers have just been brought back, and Mr. Seibel hasn't had a chance to look at these. Is that correct?
Yeah, they just, the final numbers were shared with them this afternoon because we were discussing them this evening, and he hasn't had a chance to digest and adjust yet.
Okay. So I'm kind of concerned that, obviously there's a lot of input from the administration within these schools as to how these numbers are playing out over time. And I am a little concerned that Mr. Seibel doesn't sound like was quite as involved with how these numbers were derived. I'm not sure if that's true, and that's just how it sounded.
Just let me clarify in a second. The two positions that were restored, that's what Mr. Seibel and us, we're going to go back and look at. He's got a very good handle on what the class sizes are going to be in all of the areas. But the two that were restored, we're going to go back and see where those restorations will occur, in which areas. That's what Ms. Sugars is referring to. In other words, we were cutting positions, language arts, science, social studies, math. Correct. So if we are going to restore two of those positions, those recommendations will be made according to what class size is and how we're going to identify those two positions. Not clear?
No, it sounds like a dartboard.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like a dartboard to me. I'm not trying to be crass, but
Okay.
it sounds like a dartboard.
Well, if you look at the original cuts in the areas that we proposed at the high school included language arts, science, social studies, math, transition services. Under this proposal, we've got two positions to be determined for the restoration.
But curricularly, shouldn't we understand, I can say, I understand you're going to have this for us hopefully next week, but curricularly, just adding it back in, there needs to be a rationale as to why we're adding two positions back into any one of those areas, rather than just...
There will be rationale. Just tell us.
But the restoration now is just saying we're going to restore it, but I want to know the thought process and which ones we'll restore. I'm just lost in that transition.
Tell us the methodology that you used. Tell us how you prioritize the opportunities and what your recommendation is. That's simple. We've been looking at this for a long time now, and we've got class sizes, projections. We have class size projections for each of those areas, and at this point in time, we will go back and we will look at each of those areas with rationale behind which of the two positions we will recommend on Tuesday. Any other questions, Dave? No. I just want to go back to what you were asking about the benefits and salary levels, and I think the first year it was the total benefit package was $10 million, and then the next period you asked for it was 11.
Yeah, I have most of the numbers here. I mean,
It's like a 4-year spread or something like that. I just don't want to miss the point that the 10 went to 9. I mean, the 10 went to something, and then it went down $1 billion last year, and now it's, I mean, the dramatic jump in the last year is not an anomaly, but it's something, to be reckoned with. It's been dramatic.
I mean, these are rough numbers, and I asked Lynn to put this together very quickly for me, so I know they're very rough, but just to kind of give you an idea, in 2009-10, our salaries were about just over $40 million.
Right.
Then they dropped down to $37 million in 10-11. Stayed at about 37 for 11-12, 38 for 12-13, 39, and then we're back down to 38, just under 39 this year. So the benefits really didn't start to ramp up in cost until 12-13 is when they started to really start to ramp in cost. Until then, they're pretty flat. If you go back, you jumped a lot, but you have about 9.7, 9.8, 9.9, and then it jumps up to 10.5, then it drops, and then it goes back up to just over 10.5. Last year we got the drop out of it by the change about $800,000 in savings. Now we're back up to where we would have probably been last year in benefits. Okay.
I think it's important to say why we got that savings last year.
It was a change in the system.
It was a change in carriers.
Yeah.
We went from the state plan to Aetna Insurance. So.
Anyone else have any more questions? I have a series of questions I want to ask, but I want to make sure you know that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, Lynn. A lot of students expressed last week concern over the loss of potentially some extracurricular activities. Does the current budget maintain all of our offerings in the